Should we get into the scale? Should we
Let's
do
do
our
it. Let's
scale?
go. Let's scale it. All right. Twister. What is this movie? 1995, something like that.
96 was when Twister came out. Yep.
1996 is Twister by Jan de Bont.
Yep.
Technical achievement. I give this movie a 7. Because technical is overall, that's our story, that's our score, that's acting, that's the craft of the filmmaking. Most of my points come for stunt work and special effects on this film. And for when it was made, it holds up pretty darn well. And I think that the structure of the film and the pacing are pretty good. All that being said, it's not a great film. I can't give it like a 10 out of 10. It's pretty corny and in ways where sometimes it knows what it is and sometimes it's just like not great and there's not much to it. Like there's just not much there. But I give it a 7 out of 10 technically.
Okay. No, I think that's great. I think it I agree. The structure of this movie is actually really pretty spot on. Like it hits pretty quick and it's nice because you get into the first act really, really quick before 30 minutes. And then you see the first tornado also like right at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one, I guess, is the F5. That's just kind of like a teaser. But anyway, so structurally, it's surprisingly good. The story I enjoyed enough. It is kind of like cheesy sometimes. And like, the whole, the whole love story is kind of forced in some ways, but it's enough. The visual effects are great. Like it still holds up besides the one shot, which we've talked about enough, but so it is, I think technically it's actually better than you might think it is. Like objectively trying to be objective. It's really good. And the score is good. Like the music, actually, there's a lot of really good music, 90s music in this. And I remember all these songs. It's crazy how nostalgic it was as well.
Oh yeah.
Like hearing all the songs, but the score is good. The sound design and the sound of the tornadoes, like we talked about, really, really good. So I give it a 6.8 because of some of the other flaws, but I'm pretty close to yours. So
we're right in there. Rewatchability. I will say this. I hadn't watched this movie in probably 20 years, maybe even longer than that, maybe 25 years. I couldn't believe how much of it I remembered and how I was like, oh man, I remember so much about this. I remember so much about Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. That being said, if I go another 20 years and don't watch it again, that's fine. I think that I give it a 6 on rewatchability. I just am like, it's definitely like still got some effects that are really, really cool, but it's not gonna, I just think like, on the rewatch, I was like, yeah, this movie's fine. It's fine. For what it is, I've never been a huge fan of the disaster movie genre in general. And for what it is, it's fine. And I didn't rewatch it and go, whoa, this is so much worse than I remember it.
Right.
But I gave it a 6.
Cool. I give this a little bit higher than that. I give this an 8.
All right.
Because I watched this movie a ton when I was a kid. Like I loved watching it. And the main reason I give it an 8 is because the pacing is so good. Like it's really quick and it moves. And so I'm probably being a little generous in giving it an 8, but not that I want to watch it all the time, but if it was on and I had to watch it, it's enjoyable and it will move. It's not that long, I don't even know
if I'm at my parents' house and it's like Thanksgiving and Twister's on TV and somebody puts it on, I'd be like, oh, Twister. I'd sit down and
I can rewatch it a lot. So anyway, so I give that an 8.
The ending, I gave an 8 to the ending. I really like this last stunt and how they did it practically, even though it biggest plot armor in the world, these two, and just biggest suspension of disbelief possible. But it's a really nice heightening to have our two main characters wind up in the vortex of the tornado. I don't think Twisters actually gets to this level of being like they're to the way it heightens to being like they put the audience in the middle of an actual F5 tornado, this thing they've been teasing the entire movie. And then they have them kiss. Because even though the screenplay has not quite told me why Joe and Bill's relationship is going to be better this time around, the screenplay has told me that they are going to kiss. And they do because they should. And that's the right choice. So 8 to the ending.
Yes. I give it a 7.5, mainly for those reasons too. Like it's really fun driving through the house.
Yeah.
Everything that happens, they build up to the F5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially that we didn't talk about that lunch scene or dinner scene or whatever, where they're like, the fiance's like, oh, is there an F5? And everybody stops.
Yeah.
And they all look and they're like, there's only been one person that's seen an F5, which is Joe. Anyway, so it's really effective. Like, oh, F5s are really bad. So you're building up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get it, and you get what you want. Again,
the F5 tornado. Is big bad. It's the big monster. It's the boss monster.
Exactly. Boss tornado.
Yeah.
So so it builds up really, really well. Great. The ending. I think the 7.5 is also just because like they run from the tornado. It gets a little bit lower, and then they have like the belts, but it all pays off really well.
There's a lot of suspension of disbelief in that third act finale where the two of them are just running from this thing that is literally ripping houses apart and throwing tractors. But these two people are just sort of just like
running,
like maybe like half a football field away from it. And they're running on foot. Whatever.
Exactly. But it really was built up, paid off really, really, really well. So 7.5.
Cultural significance, cultural impact. I'm going to give this movie like a 6. I don't think that, again, like I said, Twisters is a sequel that nobody really asked for. It's not like Twister just sent a shockwave through the movie industry and through the culture. And people have, for the last 25 years, have been going, oh, Twister, when are we going to get Twisters? When are we going to get Twister 2? I think people largely forgot that Twister existed when the trailer for Twisters dropped. So I think at the time in the 90s, this was a big hit. And I think it was a big hit on VHS. But I don't think that it existed much past like the year 2000, really. I think it sort of like was pretty well and good faded into the cultural consciousness. But I give it a 6 because I think that it was an innovator in visual effects. ILM did some good stuff with this movie. And, I think that like, it's one of those movies that people who are 90s kids know this movie, and it's got like a lot of nostalgia to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I give it a 6 as well.
Yeah,
pretty much the exact same reasons. So I don't think I need to go into it more. But yeah, it was big when we were kids. I loved it. The cow scene has probably lived on the longest, but it still isn't as prevalent as it used to be. So but yeah, 6.
Yeah, and subjective, I'm gonna say I give it a 7. I think that's sort of the kind of the average of all of my scores is like solid 7 out of 10. B disaster movie. Like as far as this kind of movie goes, there are so many worse versions of this kind of movie, and this is a pretty solid one. I think Helen Hunt does a lot to elevate this movie, and Bill Paxton as well. I think the whole cast, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Cary Elwes, and like some pretty assured direction and action direction from Jan de Bont does enough to make this movie, in my opinion, like a solid B minus movie.
Yeah, I have 7.5.
Yeah.
I think because it's more the nostalgia. Like I could quote pretty much the whole movie, which is funny. But it had a big impact on me. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure because some of you have to admit some of it is cheesy and kind of crazy and dumb. But I really like it. So 7.5.
Okay, 2024's Twisters, the scores. Here we are. Technical achievement for Twisters. This is everything. This is the script from I'm giving this movie a 5, and that is pretty much only for the special effects and action. There were some sequences. There were the things that I mentioned about how I liked showing the destruction of a Twister more. I didn't really like this movie. I think that's obvious from my response to it.
Right.
I'm going to give it a 5 overall, middle of the road for like pretty well handled from a technical aspect, but a lot of the storytelling I think was just really lazy. It's just sort of like lazily retreading the beats of the first movie.
Yeah.
And the first movie does pretty much every single one of them better. So 5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, that's good. I gave it a 6. I had fun with my kids, which is kind of maybe. Well, this is technical, so it doesn't really go into it, but it's definitely not as good as the first screenplay or the visual effects. You could probably say might be better, but yeah, it's stealing the plot from the first one, so you can't really like give it credit for a lot of things. So yeah, and I mean, but there was a lot of other stuff that kind of looked good. I do have to say, we forgot to say this, that Lee Isaac Chung directed Twisters. He went to the University of Utah for film school. Did you know that?
Well, actually, now I like the movie a lot because he's a
grad. He's an alumni.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Unfortunately, he directed the worst episode, in my opinion, of The Mandalorian, which is
Oh, wow.
It was so boring.
Which one was that?
It was the one where the start was awesome, but then like it follows that guy who was testing Baby Yoda, and like he gets rehabilitated.
Is this in like season 3?
Yeah.
I haven't seen season 3. I stopped watching that show.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was my least favorite show. But this one, he did a lot better in this. You know, he did a pretty good job directing it as far as like, he kept it going, but it wasn't as tight and everything as the previous one. So I give the technical achievement a 6.
Rewatchability. I don't really ever want to watch this movie again, to be honest. I am like, it's just one of those movies where I'm like, I don't really know what the rewatchability is yet because I haven't watched it again, but I have no desire to watch this movie again. I don't want Warner Brothers to keep making Twister movies unless they're going to do something different with the story or find some way. It just didn't feel like this movie earned its reason to exist, in my opinion.
I could see that.
So I gave it a 3 on rewatchability.
Okay. I gave it a 5. I'm thinking more like, I mean, if I had to rewatch it, I could. So it's fun, you know, in some parts, but I'm more with you. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to go out and buy this so that my other kids can watch it like when they get older and all that. So 5's kind of middle of the road. If it was on and I had to watch it, it'd be fine, but I don't really want to. So
the ending.
Yeah.
You already know that I'm going to go low here because the screenplay thinks that it's better than having them kiss in that airport, and it's not. The screenplay is not better than them kissing in that airport, and I'm going to 2 on the ending. You didn't stick the landing, Twisters.
2. Wow.
You didn't stick it. Okay. Paul Scheer was fun. I like Paul Scheer showing up with the fun little cameo, but not only is your climax kind of boring, your climax in this town, in this movie theater, kind of a boring climax, but also you're going to have him drill his car into the ground, follow her into the airport, and not kiss.
Yeah.
Boo. 2.
Okay. Yeah. 2. I gave it a 4. Kind of the same reasons. Like it didn't up the ante. You know, it was lacking in that part, especially that part, Water Tower, as I've talked about enough, but it could have upped it. It could have made it, you know, and it could have given us, they didn't really build up to it as well as the first one. Yeah. Like the first one, you are waiting for an F5 and you get it and you get everything you want. This one, it's like, I mean, they're going to dissipate it, but it wasn't as good of a build up. So
we don't really, and this movie, for all of the beat copying that it does of the first movie, they don't have a scene where they copy the beat of explaining to the audience why EF5 is worse than an EF1 or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And they just sort of treat all of the different degrees of tornadoes in this movie like they're more or less the same. And I mean, definitely you can see the difference between the end tornado and the other ones, but the movie doesn't give the weight to it that the first movie did. It's like, you're copying all the other beats. Why not copy that beat as well? Exactly. You know, where like the British guy who's making the documentary asks, you know, about the EF scale, and they explain to him that like, if we ever see an EF,
set up.
You know, that's the day when we're not going to go post up and try to be in the middle of it. That's the day when you run, you know, something like that.
Like
there's your moment. Okay.
subject.
Cultural.
Oh yeah.
Relevance. This is something where we're going to have to sort of make a guess because we're not going to really know the cultural relevance of a movie like Twisters until 5 or 10 years later. My guess is that this movie is going to be forgotten in 2 or 3 years. Not even that long. I think that this movie's not going to make much of a dent in the culture or impact the way that films are made or do anything like that. So I gave it a 2 again.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 again.
Yeah,
I agree. That's about the same. So the rewatchability, cultural or ending, yeah.
Yeah. And then the subjective score, my score is a 4. I'm trying to be nice here. I had 3 originally, but since I heard that Lee Isaac Chung went to the University of Utah, I decided to give the movie a 4. Sorry, buddy. I thought that, and I know, this is like one of those movies where I'm like, I don't think that Lee Isaac Chung wanted to direct Twisters. I think Twisters is the movie that's given to you by a studio. They say, hey, we're making a legacy sequel to Twister, and we would like to hire you to direct it. But I don't think anyone comes out of film school going, I hope someday I get to direct the legacy sequel to Jan de Bont's Twister. I don't, like, it's just like, these movies wind up feeling so lifeless and soulless so much of the time because no one wanted to make it,
They do. Yeah. Yeah, I gave this a 5.5 because I again had fun with my kids. And it was fun enough. Don't like it nearly as much as the first one. But has some good moments, has some fun stuff. So 5.5.
All right, and there it is. There it is. That's Twister and Twisters. That is the Twister cinematic universe. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. This was a lot of fun. Anything else you want to say about the Twister cinematic universe, Kramer, before we wrap up here?
If you feel it, ride it.
If you ride it,
feel it.
If you ride it, don't fight it.
Yes.
If you ride it, don't fight it. And if you're not fighting it, you might as well be flying a kite in it.
There you go.
You might as well be out there flying a kite in it. Okay. Yep. See everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Like and share and subscribe and all those things or whatever on whatever you do. And okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.